Hey everyone, it's Omaid and welcome to The Top, where I interview authors, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders. I am so excited to introduce my guest today. He's the owner of the Indianapolis Colts, the NFL team, none other than Jim Irsay. Obviously, Jim is super busy running an NFL franchise, but one of his creative hobbies over the last few decades has been collecting rare artifacts and memorabilia. He has a number of rock and roll guitars used by legends like Kurt Cobain and Jerry Garcia from the Grateful Dead. He's got a number of presidential artifacts, letters signed by George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, and a number of pieces around sports and pop culture. In this conversation, we definitely cover his fascination and how he started collecting things. I mean, as a kid, he was collecting baseball cards. And, in the late 90s is when he collected his first guitar to get his sort of memorabilia hobby going. We also talk about his fascination with Steve Jobs and what he's learned from him. One of my favorite artifacts is a letter that Jobs hand wrote to one of his close friends right before he turned 19 years old. And he said some really insightful things in that letter. We cover that as well. We also talk about the importance of not making decisions based on emotion. There's so much ground here that we cover. I know you're going to love this conversation. Without further ado, Jim Irsay.
I collected baseball. And I'd go to our little drugstore in Winnetka, Illinois, North Shore town, small, town back then. They'd have the local drugstore. So I'd ride my bike down there and, buy the whole carton or two cartons, whatever, how many cartons they had. And the kids would be pissed at me, yell at me, "Did you buy the whole cartons?" And, we can't even buy one fucking bag. So, I was like, sorry, I had to do it, but, so that was like the beginning. And then I just, someone asked me that the other day, in an interview, and I said, and it's true. It's like, I didn't collect it until I had the money to do it, which wasn't until, the late nineties, when I had, and that's when the scroll came into play. And Hunter S. Thompson was a dear friend of mine, God rest his soul. And Cameron Crowe was a good friend. And Cameron, I was in Jerry Maguire and helped him with that movie. And so he introduced me to Hunter S. and we were really close friends. So we were talking, I was at the Waldorf Astoria at before Christie's auction and what's the significance of this book. And, we all agreed, it's kind of a holy grail because, the beats were represented. The best writer was Kerouac out of the four. Cassidy was more of a muse. Ginsberg and Burroughs were definitely, very good authors, but not Kerouac. Kerouac was in the same neighborhood as Hemingway and Hunter and, some of the greatest American or writers in the world ever, and so,
The list is amazing. I just downloaded a Hemingway book because I had never read his work.
wow.
Started reading a George Washington biography. It's like this big, it's huge, but it's amazing. I mean, these are so like you got one thing and then sort of like, and then I think like one thing leads to the next thing. I was going to ask
Yeah.
you, so you said the late 90s. It's been nearly so I was like thinking of a couple questions, like some like different topics of the things that you've purchased. And I was thinking about the Jerry Garcia's Tiger guitar, right? It's been about 20 years. I read that
Yeah.
it was like a 957K purchase.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, I'd love to hear the story of like, how did you get to purchase that? What was that story like?
Well, I had started getting down the road to collecting. A friend of mine actually, whose family had Elvis Presley museums in Canada, who's died a long time ago, unfortunately, from just misadventure on drugs and alcohol. But anyway, he was a big football fan and great high school player, and we were friends back from Chicago. And so he'd come to Colt games on the road, in the late '80s, early '90s, and so he was a big-hearted guy. We were going out to dinner back home in Winnetka, and he showed up with Elvis's guitar, And I said, he goes, I want to give this to you. And I go like, man, no. I said, no, I can't accept that. I mean, there's just no way I can accept that, and he said, well, just, you have to, you got to keep it. I'm like, I'll hold it. I'll just caretake it. But, I don't know what to say or how to accept something like that. And so then, he died about 2 years later. Um, he just got filled up and drugged up and fell off his balcony and hit his head on a wooden post and died instantly at age 34, tragically. So, then that was that. And then the guitar, was in the collection, but I had that Elvis guitar. And then I got the scroll. And then after the scroll, I was kind of off and going, some. I think I maybe got an Abraham Lincoln letter then and a couple things like that. And then, but when Tiger became available, like, I look at this like Forbes looks at like Warren Buffett would advise people. It's like, you know, what should I invest in? McDonald's, Coca-Cola, Xerox. I mean, and that's me. It's like when Wolf and Tiger came up, I had no interest in Wolf. I mean, Wolf was secondary. Tiger's the one. I don't
Yeah.
care how much I pay for Tiger. I can't overpay. Okay. Now, I'm not saying getting Wolf isn't a good thing. I just don't have an interest in that. Like I only go after Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, the Beatles, Bob Dylan, and the best of the best of the best stuff that's there of theirs. I mean, and whatever the expense, it doesn't matter. It's like I put the Beatles back together because I have the only Beatles drum kit in the world. Because first I had to get the original Beatles drum skin, and there was only 7 of them, 6 in existence. Paul McCartney had 1, and Springsteen, his drummer, a long time ago when they were cheap, got the other. And this was drum skin 2 on the Ed Sullivan Show, all their shows in America,
Wow.
the drum skin. So first I got that, and then Ringo was putting his drums up for sales in Beverly Hills. So I had to get the drum skin because Ringo's drum kit, the only Beatle drum kit, didn't have a drum skin, and because Paul had pulled it off during McCartney 1 and kept it, and back then gave a shit, so he just sent it back to Ringo, and Ringo was probably too drunk to say anything back then, So back then that's the way it is. John Lennon, had that, incredible Sergeant Pepper's original skin, and he just thumb tapped it to his refrigerator, and no one ever knows really what happened to it. That I mean, but that's the way shit went back then.
Wow. Yeah.
So then I got the drum skin, and then thank God I got the drum kit, and so I was at a NFL meeting for the NFL, and rarely Paul Allen, my God, rest his soul, one of the greatest Americans, greatest guys. I just love Paul, and obviously big collector. Just sold his collection post death for over $1 billion, but that was Monet's and all this other shit. But not to mention the EMP Museum in Seattle. But so I'm like at the meeting, I'm like, Paul, thank you so much for not bidding on Ringo's drums, man. I really appreciate it. And he's like, what do you mean I was bidding? You outbid me. I go, well, thanks for not flexing your muscle, because I think, when Paul first came in the room, like his wealth alone equaled more than the 31 of us owners put together,
The
I
Microsoft mouth. Yeah.
with Microsoft stock. But so Paul was such a great guy, but that's the way it's kind of gone through,
Was
like
it so the drums and then it was Tiger, or is it Tiger and then
well,
you were?
well, it was Tiger. Tiger was early in the process. It was Tiger was, as I recall, that was 2001, I believe. And so it was a very, 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 very high price. Because Blackie, I know that was those two were the highest, Tiger and then Clapton, Blackie. Blackie was like 980, and the other one was 957, and I can't remember which one came first, but they're, within a few years of each other. So, I'm divorced now, but my wife at the time was pissed at me. She's like, "That's ridiculous for a guitar. What the fuck's wrong with you?" I was like, "Look, I'm telling you,
So
you're wrong.
was she supportive with the hobby, or not so much at the time?
Not
Yeah.
so much at the time, and not so much now." But
I hear
we've
you. I
been
hear you.
divorced for about 20 years or whatever it is. So, but she's a good woman. She's good mom, a good grandma, and we're friends today. But it's just at the time, it was one of those things where she's still understanding things because we were married somewhat, and she was not. It was the old silent scorn, the kind
Yeah.
of look you get, said you're going to take out the garbage and you don't, you know. So it was funny, but look, I mean, I always like have known about this path and I've seen it. I don't know. I just knew, made that, this was going to be a new market that I was entering it at its very origin, that I become expert in predicting, like within $50,000 of what guitars go for. And I'm right almost all the time because almost no one else knows this market except I do. And there's always the rare exception. There always
Yeah.
is. Like, Kurt Cobain's unplugged guitar, I tried to buy, from them. I said, look, I'll give you, 1.25 million. You don't have to go to auction. I'm paying you $500,000 more than this one. And they're like, their estate, their family, and Courtney loves, I think, ex son-in-law, and Kurt's ex son-in-law, he's like, no, I think I want to go to auction. I go, well, listen, if you go to auction, just to let you know, because I'm a man of my word and it's nothing personal, but I'm principled. Like, I won't bid, this is my bid. It goes to auction. I'm not bidding. Because there's not a lot of people, Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Paul Allen, he's dead. You have people that jump in and out of the thing that get interested because of,
What
they're,
happened to that guitar? Because I couldn't find it online. I
well,
was
this
trying to.
Australian billionaire
Oh, okay.
just got into a bidding war and bought it for $6 million, which, like, we were all like, what? Because
Wow.
like
Okay.
a Beatles guitar had the record at like 3.4 at the time. And that was rad. That was like before, like, I got, David Gilmour's guitar. Then that was the record at 3.9, and
Like
then,
it resets the market, like
oh,
NFL player
I mean,
salary or something. Yeah.
you don't believe
It's
it
crazy.
raises all boats in the
Yeah.
harbor. So you're happy for your collection. I mean, I insure my collection for over $200 million and no one really knows what it's worth. But, it's like, you know, that's a good thing because, look at this. These things aren't going to be around. You can say, well, I want to get in the market. Hey, Jim, direct me towards top Beal guitar, direct me towards a top Dylan. It's like, sorry, they're not available. You
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
I mean, that's the reason, like, I've tried to buy up and there's not many every $10,000 bill that there is. I'm an owner of 4 of them, but, it's the highest US currency ever. Chase is actually, there's no president on it. It's Chase, is on the treasurer is uh, on the currency, but that's the high, they took it out of currency in the 40s, but,
Wow.
and they're $1,000 bills for a while until, the 60s and they took those out. But anyway, the point is like, you know, um, there's certain markets like I own the original Big Book, manuscript, which is, regarded as one of the price signs. If you talk to historians, scholars, philosophers, what's the most important thing in the 20th century, not landing on the moon, not solved polio vaccine, but the AA-12 steps from 1939. That, by the way, J.D. Rockefeller helped start off the first printing. But, like, so besides owning them, like, I own, like, like,
Can I ask you about one piece?
sure.
I was curious about the Steve Jobs letter, the one that he
Yeah,
penned to Tim Brown.
yeah, I tell you, I'm glad you mentioned Steve Jobs. He's one of, my guys that I guess my mentors, and not just business, but how you approach everything in life and the arts and business and everything. Um, and, I was talking to Sam Farmer of the LA Times about him and the longtime writer. Sam said, "Well, how could you like him so much? He was an asshole." I go, "I didn't like him. I just said, how he operated is I relate to it. It's like when he says, you know, the Pepsi bottle on the table should be turned sideways, not facing, I told you, sideways." And I mean, that's it. I mean, because it's like Lucille Ball. She had a vision before every scene, a premonition. She saw the scene. They say, "We don't think that's funny." And she says, "Trust, I've seen it. It's funny. I've already watched it on TV, and you have those premonitions. And so Steve Jobs' letter was really important to me because job stuff was hard to come by, period. He didn't sign many things at all. And
Did you spend some time with him? You said like he was a mentor. You guys spent
I
time.
know I
Yeah.
never spent time with them, but I've read about them. I've studied them. I understand. I mean, the guy was just brilliant. I mean, just brilliant. I mean, he understood. I mean, the marketing campaign for Apple. I mean, he knew. You're not selling computers or phones here. That's not what you're selling. Not one little bit. What you're selling, it is a lifestyle, I mean, it was remarkable, just brilliant. I mean, I can't tell you. I mean, and it's interesting, you know, I was talking about someone about brilliance and, of course it's not IQ. I mean, you can't say, well, he had his IQ was so high, I mean, I'm not talking about nuclear scientists or Albert Einstein. No, I'm talking about real brilliance that operates in all theaters that certainly can produce dollars and cents, but be genius in many forms from, you know, the NFL, being a head coach to being, a singer-songwriter, being Don Henley for the Eagles. I mean, and one thing is clear is that, common sense, and being very smart is important, but also one thing that gets forgotten is high energy. You know, you have to be high energy. And I don't mean hype. I don't mean that at all. But, you know,
Charismatic. Yeah.
you just have to, let me give you an example. It's like when I something like when I get a hook in my mouth, like I don't care how long it takes. I never tire. I get stronger. If it's a day later, we haven't slept, let's go. You know, are you okay? I'm better than okay. I'm gaining strength. I mean, it's just, I don't know what it is. It's just, it's something about, I think there's something that drives you that just like you feel insistent about getting it out, just insistent, and Jobs had that. But he also was a great listener. And you have to be fiercely open minded. Anytime you close your mind to something, you know, you've limited yourself. You now have joined the club of limitation, and so it's really interesting because I've been around a lot of smart people and some smart different than others. So I know some of the smartest lawyers in the world. I know some of the smartest businessmen in the world. And it's so interesting, when when Twitter was founded, I was up in San Fran at their headquarters. They're emptying boxes there and they wanted me to invest. And I was with the CEO there. And he walks in this ruffled t-shirt and we talked and talked and talked for about 3 hours. And I was like, oh my God, this is like, this is the top 3 or 4 smartest people I've ever talked to in my fucking life. I mean, you could just tell. I mean, it was like,
This is
it
Jack
was,
Dorsey at this point.
yeah, it was stunning. I mean, it was stunning. It was like, it really was. I didn't expect it. I mean, it's like, and you know, it just like, but I've seen that same sort of brilliance, like, and meeting, I don't know him real well, but meeting like Bruce Springsteen. I do know Dylan pretty well, but I don't know Bruce that well. But I've spent some time with Bruce, and those people are just, and so,
I thought
you
the
know,
letter was like, it's interesting. You call him brilliant, but he had the foresight to sort of admit he was trying to figure out life and he didn't know where he was going. And I read online that he wrote that letter before he went to India. It was just interesting, right? He's like
well,
18, 19 years
you
old.
perfect point, in high levels of spirituality and most religions, namely Eastern, and I minored in religion and studied heavy Christianity, heavy Buddhism, in college. But, um, uh, you know, in many religions, the highest level of enlightenment is not knowing, not knowing. And you would think it's the opposite. Well, you must know if you're enlightened. No, because anyone who's enlightened knows you can't know. How can you know? Like, how can you know about everything, every second, everywhere? I mean, no one can know that. But when you understand, you don't know, and you're at peace with it. Like, you become enlightened because, the fears go away and you just have a complete sense of, really, who you are, and you're not the hole in the donut. You're not a nothing. In fact, you know, you're everything and nothing. I mean, what do you mean by that? I don't get it. It's like, well, that's the whole point. No one does. It's
Yeah.
like, I've had dreams. I had one. I rarely, I've had it through psychedelics, but more likely, on occasion, just from unnatural dream state, which is rare. But, I wake up, I start taking notes at the end of my dream, going, I have to tell, oh my God, I have that, I wake up and it's like, we have to tell them what? What are you going to write down? You don't even know what you're talking about. It was like, because it was a feeling. It was like a massive, pervasive feeling of enlightenment. How do you fucking write that down? You can't write it down. It's not possible, you know, and that's the whole point, and I think that's the thing, getting back to the collection and the people like Steve Jobs and that. I mean, it's all the same. It's all tied together. Steve Jobs, Jim Morrison, you know, I mean, Ernest Hemingway, you know, I mean, for me, Dylan Thomas, he changed everything I thought about when I read Dylan Thomas. I thought you needed, a Les Paul and a Marshall amplifier and John Bonham on drums to have power. But then I read 3 or 4 sentences from, Dylan Thomas, and I was just like, are you kidding me? It's like, I didn't know that was possible. Anyone to write like that. It's like, it's like, I'm blown away, and with Steve Jobs, it was really, because like I said, his stuff is rare. And, with the collection, I'm very intuitive on how I put it together and how much I go to which area. Like, cause like with Steve Jobs, for instance, like, I'm never gonna be have a ton of Steve Jobs stuff, but I must have some. I can't tell you why. Like, I don't know why that is. Um, it's just that, I mean, it's like, because the whole point of the collection is it's so eclectic. I mean, I have letters from Abraham Lincoln, George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, and, you know, uh, Charles Manson, I mean, and I was reluctant at first to get the Manson letter because he's insane. He's insane. He's in prison. He's fucking insane.
Yeah.
But it was an important part of our history when that went down and what was happening in the world with JFK and then Bobby and then Martin Luther King, then the killings, up there, with Sharon Tate, and Nixon. I mean, everything that was coming apart, was finally apart by the time Nixon flew away in that helicopter, but I do have Nixon's resignation letter. It's 1 page.
No
one
way. That's crazy.
one line, just
Yeah.
I,
So, so not everything people will see like in San Francisco necessarily is on the list, but a lot of it is going to be there.
yeah, we can't, there's literally over, 500 things,
Okay.
probably 1,000 things. So you can't, I mean, believe me, I credit our guys. I mean, really, oh man, it's remarkable. Like we're like a Pink Floyd show. Like these guys that bring this shit around and stuff. I mean, this is semi trucks and air. I mean, I'm
Oh
telling.
yeah.
I mean, we're talking about pianos here, and Elton John's piano that was at Live Aid. Freddie Mercury played, Paul McCartney played. John Lennon's last performance with Elton John on it. Elton John's performance in Dodger Stadium in '74. It used to be white, now it's black because Elton painted it black before it became available. John Lennon's piano that he wrote Sergeant Pepper's on, that lived in his house, was with his flat in his flat for almost 20 years. So, like, this is massive shit. I mean, even Hunter S. Thompson's Red Shark from Leaving Las Vegas. I'm not leaving. I mean, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. I don't know if you read that book, but it's worth reading if you haven't. But you know, we have cars there. Edgerrin James brings his Hall of Fame car that's really cool. That's signed by
I
a
saw
bunch
that.
players. So it's something, it's like even the scroll, we probably won't get it out in that arena because there's not a room, but I've had it in Paris. We had it at the full 120 feet, so I have a case that allows, you can go to 120 or 60 or 30. I don't know, or probably, 15, the shortest, but, that's what make things like if you talk about the scroll, why is that worth so much? Why is it so special? Because the physical nature of
Yeah.
makes it, if it was just a manuscript, it'd be worth a ton. But the fact that it's 118 feet long, I mean, what? I mean, you have to go to the ancient Egypt scrolls of, to find anything like that. I mean, it's the same thing. Why is Tiger so special too? Because on the 24th fret is Jay Garcia. When Doug Irwin decided to put that there, you know, um, he changed the badges. Also, there's a heroin stash box secretly inside of Tiger that Jerry used to stash his heroin in when he used to, try to break the borders, which he did most of the time, with the stash, and it's in the guitar deep inside, but, it's like, there's all sorts of funny stories that go along with collecting,
Yeah.
I
Can,
got,
can I? I
I
was going
got,
to ask. Can I ask you
no,
one more sort of business life question to wrap?
no, go ahead.
Okay. I was thinking about your dad, and he seemed like a very emotional leader when I was watching tape about him. You seem to be more cool under pressure. And one of the things I was thinking about, when you're a quarterback who's the prime guy, Andrew Luck, kind of retires out of nowhere, might be your biggest asset at the time, but you're really good at like pivoting and not panicking, and you keep moving forward. So in other words, I'm kind of wondering how have, like, when you think about leading through uncertainty, I think you do a pretty good job of it. What comes to mind? Like, what lessons can you sort of impart with people about that?
Well, first of all, my dad was a brilliant man. Uh, yeah, the alcohol, took away who he was eventually, and interestingly enough, my dad was a brilliant guy. I mean, I'm talking about if you met him when he was 38 years old, I mean, now, I mean, I'm talking brilliant and very creative thinker. Um, just able to like I have a photographic memory for numbers, and he didn't have that, but he was always attuned to numbers, but he was just very much uh there was this side, it's like Jekyll and Hyde, because when he drank, you're right. I mean, the shit he did, I mean, I have to show you sometime, maybe Jeffrey or someone could send you the 84, spring footage before we left for our late winter footage in Baltimore, the famous 14 minutes at the airport. I mean, it's nothing like you see, you go like, this couldn't have happened. Like, there's no way this happened. I mean, It's not out there even on YouTube because we taped it off a local and it didn't go national back in '84. But when you see it, like you would just fucking die. I mean, but anyway, you know, the biggest mistake people make in business is being emotional. You know, that's when you make mistakes. You know, I've seen it all the time. Seen guys sue someone, they owe $50,000, they pay $400,000 legal fees, and they get their 50 back. I got it back, oh mate. Fuck, I fucked him. Yeah, but you paid $400,000 legal fees. Does that make sense? You know, I mean, to me, you know, when the shit hits the fan, things slow down. Like, because I was born with a snake in both my fists where a hurricane was blowing. It's just the nature of things. The home I grew up in, you know, the alcoholic home and losing my sister to a car crash, my brother to birth defects at a young age, dying, and everything that I went through. I mean, you know, it's like going to school in Beirut, you know, bombs go off, bodies fall while you're walking eighth grade. And you just keep walking because you're used to it. You know, it's no big deal. You know, and that's been the way it's always been for me. I can tell you stories that you wouldn't fucking believe tonight. I mean, stories that you could not possibly believe. Honestly, I'm not bragging about it. I'm not saying anything about it. It's just like people that know me just shake their head and go, I just, your life, it's just been just, it's crazy. It's like, how have you survived the hurricane winds of it all? But, for me, I slow down in it. And, as a leader, you know, you're responsible for being above the fray. It's like the first time I got on the bus to address the team. It was in Detroit in 1976 in the old Silver Dome when my dad fired the coach during preseason. And I got on the bus at 16, sat in alone. And I was compelled because I do everything alone. Like I get my thoughts. I don't call people and consult. It's just, I get it through the universe. And I sat in that alone on that empty stadium turf and go, I have to do something. Jim, you have to do something. Those are your big brothers. It was like watching your dad and your big brothers get in a fight. I mean, it was bad. I get on the bus at 16 and that's the first time I addressed the whole team, you know, and, you know, they were incredibly shocked and supportive, obviously, because they saw a 60-year-old kid, here he is, stepping up for his dad, trying to make things right, and so like, I don't know, you're compelled to do those things. And, emotions is the biggest thing, that hurt and rationalization. It's like rationalizing kills people because you convince yourself because it's easier that way. You want to believe it. So rationalization always the chief,
You're like
enemy.
confirming your own bias, essentially. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, rationalizations are, well, shit, um, I'm kind of on a diet, 2 Big Macs, a large fry, and a Diet Coke. Hey man, I'm working at it, really. Um, but like, like I don't like bullshit myself. I mean, like I like to know what the fucking score is. Okay. Tell me what the score is. I want to know. And that's the way I deal with people. If there's some shit going on, if I got something with you or something, you don't have to wonder. You won't see any silent score. I will be there to look you in the eye and say, hey man, look it, here's the way, I just went through it with a really close friend, a very famous person. And, he promised something, he didn't deliver. And I could have let it die. A lot of people would have, but I said, man, that's bullshit. You promised you were going to do this. You promised, you know, and you backed off, man. And I'm not saying it's the end of our relationship and stuff, but I want you to know that that's bullshit, man. And that's not the way, that's not the way I roll, and it's not the way you should roll because I know you better. And but rationalization, is a killer all the time. But man, overreaction, that's just emotion. So you could
Yeah.
say this overreaction is like being emotional, but you know, you have to be like Spock on Star Trek, but we're still human beings. It's like we're emotional beings, but boy, it's like it's like I told Dean Spanos when, you know, the Chargers, were possibly going to move and they had a thing with Eisner and Jerry Richardson had trumped this thing up, you know, um, out there, where was it, Jerry? Remember, where were they going instead of England? I mean, instead of where Crocky's deal, and he was going out with Eisner. They had a whole deal set up, you know, that they're going to roll out there, um, and probably with the Raiders, but
It was with the Rams.
but it's like, so we're going to Houston, and I told Dean, I said, Dean, it ain't happening, bro. I know it was recommended unanimously by the relocation committee, which is very, 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 very unusual. But Crocky's got it because he's got the ability and the wherewithal to make this thing work. And he's going to put $6 billion out there and make it work. And you ought to hitch your horse right to him, right on him. At the same time, put that flag in the ground because he wants you out there as a co-tenant, and he's willing to do that. It's like, oh no, Carson is where they're going. Carson. So, so we're at the meeting and I go, you can try, but as soon as it's dead, we were in Houston at the owner's meeting. I said, as soon as it's dead, ship quick. So of course it dies. He doesn't get it. Crocky gets it. And he's like, I have to think I'm too crushed I say, Dean, what are you talking about? What do you mean you're too crushed? I mean, now, so they wait a year before they put the pole in the ground and then they look like they're coming in second, and so that's just like an example where, you have to be, you can't let emotion, you know, swing that thing over. I mean, like, I'm expecting, like, when I go into situations like that, I'm expecting the unexpected. I mean, nothing surprised. I mean, when Andrew Luck retired, I had a premonition about it. I knew it was going to happen. I mean, I didn't even say that to myself, literally, but I could feel it coming. I don't know why. It was not a shock to me when he walked in one on one and told me what the deal was, I think it's just one of those things where it's really, really important, you know, to keep emotions out of business decisions and big life decisions. Um, because we are emotional beings and I'm not saying that you don't have emotions, but it's inappropriate to decision making because
Yeah.
when you make decisions on emotion, you're just not going to make the right decisions. And if you let rationalization creep in, you're going to be thinking you're doing something that you're just not,
Yeah.
but it's awfully hard to learn that because it's simple, but it's not easy, and so life experience has to teach it. I'm always mentoring younger people and trying to talk to them, because it's great to see these new people that are going to be all the new billionaires, 20, 30 years from now. They're the new, and I love it because I think it's going to be a lot different group of people, more normal people, just down to earth people, so to speak, which is great.
Jim, I can talk to you for another 3 hours, but I also want to be mindful of your time.
No, I'm cool. I'm cool. But anyway, I wanted to say that, be at the
just
floor.
Yeah, and just to go back to what you guys are doing this weekend, I mean, I think it's great, and the fact that you're doing it for free, like people can go check out the collection. I mean, there's so many stories, and there's so many other questions I had, but like the things that people are gonna learn, and the stories that they don't even know about. Susan B. Anthony, like they're people are gonna walk in there and they're gonna learn so much, and they can share stories with their families and friends. So I think there's so much
Well,
good
no
out of it.
question, man. I want to emphasize, like this is part of, the service work I do with my family. And it's part of giving back because I've been so blessed. And look at, I don't need people's money to buy a ticket. Why do I need that? I'm not going to charge them. I mean, they're trying to make, payments on their cars. They have 3 kids there. Why do I need their money? I mean, look at, I do this for them, because I am them. I've been them. I work construction. I've been in the streets working construction in Chicago bankers come by me and I'm all dirty and sweaty. And they look at me, who's that guy digging a ditch? It's like, it's like it'll turn your face to alabaster when you find your servant was your master, like Sting says. And that's the way it is. We all play all the roles. We are all of it. I come from peasant roots. My grandmother, not great, my grandmother was a poor inner city maid from Poland, an immigrant who couldn't speak the language, raising 5 kids because my grandpa died of alcoholism in 1927. And she raised 5 kids, including my mom. And like if like I do it for her, like I'll give you an example on one of the last stories I can tell, but like because she was a poor inner city maid, like here's how life goes. That's the reason we all play such a big role. We're doing a grievance out in San Francisco, of all places. This great arbitrator, he's long dead now. Back then he was in his mid-80s. Legend, Sam Cagle. Look him up. Sam Cagle resolved all the union shit down at the docks and stuff in Frisco way back in the 30s. I mean, this guy was a legend, smoked a pipe, looked like Burlage. I mean, a legend. So we're there for the Burt Jones grievance in 82. And I'm a young executive. And we're leaving. And Dennis Kern, one of the great NFL executive lawyers who worked in labor law, we're leaving. And I look and, I'm a young guy. We're going, grabbing our carry-on to get on US Air, plus LaGuardia. And I go, in San Francisco, I'm going to the airport. I'm like, why is there $1 on your pillow? And because we were in his room, we were about to leave. And he goes, oh, I just leave that for housekeeping, because, I know they appreciate seeing that. It's just my way of saying thank you, and the light went on. I mean, I'm not bragging, but I've given away over $10 million to housekeepers. Every time I'm in a room, there's a letter from me, handwritten, that says, I see you. Thank you for your service. God sees your hard work. Here's $700. Here's $1,000. Here's $500. The acknowledgement that they're seen and appreciated, and the aspect that this money can change them and help change their life. That's just, that's what I do. Like I wake up and I try to be of service. Help, be in a kitchen as you are sometimes hiding from this and that, trying to get into an event, and I'll see, maybe someone who's throwing the trash away. They may not even have their papers for this country, and I walk up to them and say, I hand them a $10,000 envelope. And they'll think like, wait a minute, I don't understand. Like, are you arresting me? Is this a joke? Is this candid camera? What do you want from me? You want sexual favors? It's like, no, bro. It's like, hey, just pass it on and just you're appreciated, man. I just want to help, and it changes lives. And for me, I can do it. It's like one thing that's funny about $1 billion is like, did you know if you spent $1,000 a day since Christ was born, 1,000 a day since Christ was born, you couldn't spend $1 billion.
Wow.
I mean, that just gives you some sort of notion, and I just like getting to the people that are like out on the streets, that fucking need it, and so, and with housekeeping, that's always been, something dear to me. But, that's the way it goes. It's like that guy who put the $1 on his pillow is very responsible for the whole thing. I mean, it's $1, but I saw it. And that if I didn't see it, the light wouldn't have gone on, but that's where you have, try to have your awareness level up. And, we're so excited for the show. It's a chance, really to celebrate and to have people have fun. And, it's our 8th show. And just really, really looking forward to it. Are you going to have a chance to be there?
No, my wife is quarantining me for Christmas, so nobody
Well,
gets sick. Hopefully next time, if there's a next time.
Well, it's getting close to around that time of year, but I appreciate the conversation, and just really look forward to just happy holidays and New Year to you, and give all my friends at Forbes a hello.
I will. I'll tell him about that list too. So Caroline
I'm
might have
kinda-
to. You might need a follow up to that list.
I
Just
think
let us know.
they'll probably say, "Well,
Yeah.
you know, it's like, it's funny, like with those things, but you know,
Thanks,
they,
so man.
you know,
Yeah, no
people
problem.
print
Thank you,
out
guys.
out there. So, well, okay, old mate, great to meet you, great to talk to you, man.
Likewise.